If you woke up in Salem, 1692, the year the air itself went mad with certainty, you wouldn't last till morning. You'd think the danger was the devil. You'd be wrong. It was your neighbors, your family, your friends who suddenly remembered every small thing you'd ever done that made them uncomfortable. People didn't need proof here. Only a story that spread fast enough to feel true. And once it felt true, it was as real as the rope they'd tie around your neck. This is sleepy survival. Tonight, we're wandering back to Salem, Massachusetts, a place where a whisper could end a life, and prayer could become a weapon. Get comfortable, keep your candle close, and remember, sometimes survival isn't about strength, it's about silence. Now close your eyes, and listen for the knock at the door. You wake to the sound of wood being spoken to. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. The first one makes you lift your head. The second one makes you still. The third one waits, certain of itself. The fire's gone out, leaving only a smell of smoke and damp wool. Your room holds its breath like it's waiting to be accused. The frost at the window makes thin white branches that crawl toward your bed. You think for a moment it's just the wind, but the wind doesn't wait for you to answer. You light the tallow candle with stiff fingers. Its flame is small, shy, uncertain, like it already knows it's about to see something it shouldn't. The shadows rise around it, and suddenly your own outline on the wall looks like someone else's. You whisper into the dark, asking who's there, and the answer comes by order of the magistrate. Open the door. You freeze. You've heard the whispers in the market all week. Goody Bishop's child fell ill after drinking your tea. The widow's cow went dry after you passed her gate. The cat that sleeps on your porch vanished by moonlight. You thought it would fade, like gossip usually does. But in Salem, gossip isn't small talk, it's prophecy. You pull your cloak tight, open the door. The cold rushes in with the smell of night and unwashed wool. There are 2 men. One you know, Constable Herrick, eyes sharp and satisfied. The other you don't, but his hand holds a folded paper with red wax bleeding down its seal. Behind them, the minister, Reverend Paris, muttering softly, as though even he can't believe he's become part of this. The constable reads your name aloud, though he doesn't need to. Then he reads the words written beneath it. For examination. The word feels soft enough to be safe, but everyone knows what it really means. They don't let you dress. They don't let you gather your things. You slip on your cloak, still smelling faintly of rain and bread. Herrick snuffs your candle with his thumb and says, "Dark arts favor darkness." You almost smile at that. Salem loves its poetry. Outside, the moon hangs like a single coin over the snow. The ground crunches beneath your boots, a dry, small sound that seems too human in all this silence. Behind a window, a curtain flutters, a shape watches. Someone will say tomorrow that they saw you taken in the night. They won't mention that they watched the whole thing and did nothing. The Reverend leads the way, lantern swinging, its light stretching over the path like the arm of God himself. He mutters scripture under his breath. Something about weeds among wheat. You don't catch it all, but you catch enough. You think about the bread you left rising on the table, the hens still locked in their coop, the warmth you'll never get back once the door closes behind you. Herrick tries to fill the silence. He says they've been keeping an eye on you, that you've been seen speaking to something in your garden. You tell him it was the neighbor's dog. He says the dog's gone missing. You try to laugh. It comes out wrong, a sound that freezes mid-air. Laughing at your sins, he mutters. Proof enough. You don't bother replying. In Salem, silence is suspicious, but so is everything else. The meeting house waits like a mouth with too many teeth. Its windows glow with the kind of light people mistake for holiness. Inside, benches are filled, the same faces you trade flour with, the same people who've borrowed your pot and never returned it. You notice Abigail Williams, the minister's niece, trembling near the front. The magistrate asks if she sees your spirit. She gasps, folds in half, cries that you're standing over her shoulder. Her friends join in. One screams, another faints, another points at nothing. The men watch like it's theatre, and it is. You just didn't buy a ticket. You try to speak, but the noise swallows you whole. When you do manage a few words, "I am innocent. I have done no harm." Your calmness looks like pride. Your trembling looks like guilt. Your silence looks like a confession. The room is a mirror that turns every movement into proof. Someone calls out that you bewitched the constable's horse. Someone else swears your shadow moved against the wall. You want to tell them that shadows do that, but no one in this room remembers how the natural world works anymore. The magistrate looks down at the parchment, then up at you. "Covenant with the devil," he says, as though reciting a verse from the Book of Common Sense. They bind your wrists with hemp rope, coarse, eager to remember its purpose. The Reverend steps close enough for you to smell the candle smoke in his hair. He says he prays you'll repent before dawn. He doesn't pray for truth, only for closure. When you're led out, the room exhales like a creature that's fed. You step back into the cold and suddenly the whole town feels thinner, sharper. Every window seems to blink. The snow squeaks. The moon follows. A few men trail behind you. And the Reverend hums a hymn that isn't meant to comfort you. You walk past the frozen harbour. The sea creaks like old wood. And you think of how easy it would be to vanish into it. How the Atlantic doesn't accuse anyone of anything. The jail is just a room that's forgotten it was ever part of a church. The walls weep. The straw smells like things that once lived. The turnkey takes your name, counts your fingers, then walks away. In the corner, someone's praying. In another, someone's crying. The sound of both together makes a kind of music, the sort that used to play under sermons. You sit on the straw, cloak still damp, hands raw from rope. For the first time you let yourself think the word witch, not as accusation, but as rumor, as something that lives in the space between fear and explanation. You think of all the faces in that room, each of them building safety out of your ruin, each of them certain. You lie back, watch your breath curl toward the ceiling, and whisper a question to nobody. When did belief forget how to be kind? Outside, the moonlight crawls across the floorboards, and the night keeps its promise to stay silent. Like or subscribe only if you actually enjoy sleepy history. Where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Tomorrow, the town will say they always knew you were strange. Tomorrow, they'll call it proof. And tomorrow night, they'll sleep well, because they've decided who the danger was. That's Salem, and that's why you wouldn't survive it. The morning comes quietly, not as mercy but as evidence. The frost has thickened overnight. It coats the barred window in a film of white so thin you could almost mistake it for light. The cell smells of straw, damp wool and prayer. The kind of prayer that's whispered through cracked lips and isn't meant to be answered. You're not alone in here. You can hear two others breathing in the dark. The kind of slow, careful breathing of people trying not to draw attention from God or the jailer. One woman mutters the Lord's Prayer again and again, getting lost after deliver us from evil every time. You understand. There's too much evil here to know which kind she's asking about. A guard unlocks the door and tells you the magistrates will gather new testimony. He doesn't say evidence. Salem doesn't deal in that currency. It trades in rumor, and rumor pays better. You follow him out into the frost-white morning. The town feels hungover on righteousness, smoke still clinging to roofs, snow trampled into dirty trails of faith. Down the street, women fetch water, pretending not to look. They do it well, but not perfectly. One lifts her eyes just long enough to meet yours, and in that half second she decides who you are for the rest of her life. You look down. That's all it takes for her to tell her husband later that you wouldn't meet her gaze. At the meeting house steps, you see Goodman Bradbury, your neighbour, whispering to Goody Corey. He's gesturing with both hands, dramatic, preacher-like, and she's nodding like someone who's just remembered something terrible. By noon she'll remember it differently. By evening it'll become a sworn statement. This is how the whisper network works. A few frightened words smoothed over by repetition, lacquered by fear, passed from mouth to mouth until they sound like history. They take you into the small chamber behind the pulpit, part office, part courtroom, part confessional booth for God's least patient administrators. The Reverend sits by the fire, Bible open but eyes closed, as if even Scripture is too tired to argue anymore. He tells you people have spoken, that you've been seen walking alone near the woods, that your hands were wet with earth in the shape of the devil's mark. You tell him you were pulling herbs, comfrey and sage. He nods, but not like someone who's listening, more like someone checking a box that says denial recorded. A scribe scratches on parchment, every movement of his quill loud enough to be a kind of judgment. Do you deny consorting with familiar spirits? The magistrate asks. You tell him you don't even consort with your neighbours. No one laughs. They bring in a witness. Sarah Churchill, a young girl with a face scrubbed raw. Her eyes dart everywhere except yours. She says she saw you in her dreams, sitting upon my chest and choking me. The magistrate leans forward, nodding as if dreams were legal tender. You could say she's frightened, that she's repeating what the others said, that dreams mean nothing. But in Salem, dreams are more real than facts. Dreams don't argue back. You notice something else. The quiet competition in their voices. Each girl who testifies speaks louder, more dramatic, more possessed than the one before. It's theatre as survival, and the audience, the magistrates, the deacons, the reverend, can't look away. They ask if you've ever cursed an animal. At midday the court breaks for prayer. They bow their heads to thank God for revealing the devil's agents. You're still in the room when they do it, kneeling among them like a sermon illustration that got lost on its way to the pulpit. Through the window you can see townspeople gathered outside, some curious, some horrified, most pretending to be both. They stand in tight clusters, heads bent together. Even now new stories are being born, shaped like frost patterns on the glass. Delicate, spreading, impossible to remove. You wonder what version of you is being told right now. Maybe you flew through the night sky. Maybe you danced with the devil in the forest. Maybe you made the neighbor's bread fail to rise, a sin worse than any. The details don't matter. What matters is that each retelling confirms the next. By the time the sun sets, you'll have lived a dozen new lives, none of them your own. When the magistrates return, they seem almost refreshed. They've prayed, and prayer is a powerful solvent for doubt. The reverend asks again if you'll confess. He says confession will save your soul, even if your body must pay. You ask him what happens if you tell the truth. He doesn't answer. You realize he's tired too. Everyone here is, but tiredness has turned to zeal, and zeal forgives everything, especially cruelty. That night, back in your cell, you hear laughter, faint through the wall. Not joy, exactly. Something sharper. It's two girls outside the jail window, whispering about what they saw in the meeting house. Her eyes, one says, they glowed when she denied it. No, says the other. I think it was the candlelight. They laugh again. It doesn't matter which of them is right. The sound alone is enough to make both true. You lie down on the straw, eyes open. The ceiling timbers stretch above like ribs. Somewhere a woman sobs in her sleep. You think about how quickly a rumor becomes faith here, how fear makes believers of everyone. And then, almost without meaning to, you start to wonder if everyone believes it. Does it start to matter whether it's true? Wouldn't it be easier to confess, just to make it stop? You turn that thought over like a hot coal, careful not to hold it too long, because that's how they win, not by the rope or the cell, but by making you dream their dream instead of your own. Outside the wind picks up again, whistling through the cracks in the door. It sounds almost like whispering. Maybe it's the same whisper that started all this. The one that found you, named you, and never once stopped to ask if it was right. Tomorrow, they'll call new witnesses. Tomorrow, someone else will remember something they didn't mean to. And tomorrow night, another knock will come, not at your door this time, but someone else's. Because once the whisper starts in Salem, it doesn't stop until there's no one left to whisper about. The morning of your examination begins before the sun has the courage to rise. They wake you with a bucket of cold water, and the sound of a latch sliding open, two noises that mean the same thing here. Obedience. The jailer doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. You already know what this morning is. You've heard enough women whisper about it in the dark. Those who came back from the questioning trembling like wet cloth. Those who never came back at all. They give you a moment to compose yourself, as if dignity were part of the ritual. Then they lead you out. The frost has a new shine today, a kind of cruel prettiness that doesn't melt even when the sun hits it. The whole town seems awake, though no one's saying much. Doors open quietly as you pass. People look out, not long enough to be brave, but long enough to remember your face. You walk between two men toward the meeting house again. The same path as before, except this time the lanterns are already lit. The glow of the candles looks less like light and more like appetite. Inside it's warm, but the warmth feels borrowed, as though the air itself doesn't want to be complicit. There's a small table near the front of the chamber. A rope, a book, a bowl of water, a few scraps of cloth. Everything neat, everything waiting. The magistrate, Hathorne, sits like he's been carved from the chair itself. Beside him, Reverend Paris, with the familiar posture of someone who prays not for mercy but for proof. A scribe dips his quill in ink, the tiny scrape of the nib marking time like a clock that counts only sins. You're told to stand where everyone can see you. They call this the examination. You think it's a beautiful word for something that intends to destroy. Do you know why you are here? Hathorne asks. You could answer honestly that you're here because you were convenient, because someone's bread didn't rise, because someone's child fell sick, because someone saw something in you that frightened them, intelligence, independence, or just the quiet audacity to live alone. But you only say, "No, sir." He nods like a teacher pretending patience. You are accused of witchcraft. You have been named by several credible witnesses. Do you persist in denying it? You answer, "I am innocent." And at once the girls gasp. One shrieks that she sees your spirit hovering. Another collapses, convulsing, hair falling across her face like black water. Someone cries that you're choking her. No one touches anyone. Yet the air fills with terror thick enough to chew. You turn to the magistrate. But he isn't watching you. He's watching them. And you realize that their performance is not madness. It's choreography. Reverend Paris steps forward. "If you are innocent," he says, "why do these godly children suffer in your presence?" You look at him. The calm of your gaze mistaken for defiance. "I do not know," you say. "Perhaps because they are afraid." He smiles thinly. "Fear is of the devil," the room murmurs. "You've said too much, though. You barely said anything at all." They begin the physical inspection next. Two women are called forward. Matrons from the congregation, their eyes hard as tallow candles. They lead you behind a screen. You can still hear everything. The scrape of chair legs, the coughs of men pretending not to imagine what's behind the fabric. The matron's hands are rough, impatient, searching. They are looking for witch marks. Any blemish, mole or birthmark that could serve as a mouth for your familiar spirits. When they find a small scar near your shoulder blade, they whisper in unison, and you feel the verdict form quietly in the air. One of them leaves to report. The other leans close and murmurs, "If you confess, it will go easier." Her breath smells like salt, and something sweet, maybe guilt. They bring you back out. Hathorne nods toward your scar. "It is there," he says, satisfied. He looks almost relieved, like a man whose faith has just been proven measurable. "Would you have us believe this mark is natural?" You nod. He smiles faintly. "Nature, too, was made by God, and the devil has his counterfeit." The crowd approves. You can feel it, that electric hum of righteousness that travels from one heartbeat to the next. They command you to touch the afflicted girls. If they are truly bewitched, your touch will break the spell. You hesitate, not because you fear them, but because you already know what happens when faith is tested by facts. You reach out and brush one girl's sleeve. She falls limp. A miracle, they call it. To you, it's simply gravity and exhaustion. The room erupts, half in prayer, half in panic. They cry that the witch's power has fled. Hathorne stands, triumphant, already writing tomorrow's sermon in his mind. You try to speak over the noise, but you might as well argue with the sea. No one wants truth when the performance is this good. By late afternoon, they've worn themselves out. The crowd thins, the candles gutter, and even the magistrate's righteousness begins to yawn. You're left standing in the center of the room, wrists red where the rope rubbed, hair damp with sweat. The Reverend tells you the Lord has shown mercy today, because you will live to see another examination. You want to ask how many times one must survive mercy before it kills them, but the guards are already leading you away. Outside, the snow has begun again. Thin flakes drift through the air, landing on your face, your wrists, your torn shawl. For a moment you think they look like feathers, soft, gentle, weightless, almost like forgiveness. You know better. In Salem, even the snow reports what it sees. And so the day ends not with proof, but with applause. Not with guilt, but with agreement. You are no closer to freedom, only deeper in someone else's certainty. Tomorrow the girls will dream again, and their dreams will all have your face. Night again. You count time not by hours anymore, but by how many times the candle outside your cell guttered and was replaced. The air is damp and tastes of metal. The slow bleeding of rain through stone. The straw beneath you smells like everything that has slept here before. Sweat, dirt, and the quiet decay of human hope. You think you're alone until you hear the whisper. Not words, just sound rising and falling, like breath trying to decide if it still belongs to a living thing. Across the cell, in the half-light, a woman sits with her knees drawn up beneath her chin. Her hair is matted, her eyes glimmer in the candlelight like two thoughts refusing to die. She sees you watching. They asked if I would name another, she says. Her voice is steady, the kind of steady that means something inside has already broken. I said your name. You don't speak. You don't even feel anger. You just nod, because that's how it goes here. If you name someone else, you live another day. If you don't, you hang. They call it confession. But here, confession isn't truth. It's currency. Every word you give them buys you another sunrise. Every silence earns you rope. You understand why people start talking. It's not cowardice, it's mathematics. Outside, the jailers murmur. You can tell by their voices that new accusations have arrived. There's a rhythm to it now. The daily churn of names, signatures, stories stitched from half memories. They'll come for you soon. You can feel it. It's always after midnight when they do, when the air feels thinner, when the mind can't tell guilt from exhaustion. The door creaks open. Lantern light bleeds across the floor. Two men step in, the constable and the reverend. The reverend looks at you as if trying to locate your soul in a body he's already condemned. He says your name softly, like he's about to pray for it. Then he says the word that means everything and nothing. Confess. You ask, to what? He replies, to the truth that's already known. The constable unfolds a parchment. There are names on it. 30, maybe 40. Some you recognize, some you don't, some are already dead. He asks if you saw them at the devil's meeting in the woods. You almost laugh, but you don't, because laughter is another mark. You tell him you weren't there. He sighs, not disappointed, just inconvenienced. Reverend Parris closes his eyes as if in pain. Sister, he says, lying before God is worse than any pact you've made. You want to ask what pact he means, but that would mean pretending this conversation still makes sense. The Reverend moves closer. He sets the lantern on the floor between you. Its light flickers across both your faces, turning the air into a trembling orange veil. Do you feel the devil's hand on you even now? He asks. You say nothing. He nods, as if silence itself confirms it. You watch his hands, thin, pale, resting on the Bible like claws on prey. You wonder if he believes what he's saying, or if belief has simply become the only thing left he knows how to hold. He talks of mercy, of the soul's salvation, of how God will forgive you if you speak. But his voice cracks slightly on the word forgive, and you catch the smallest truth in that. He's afraid too, not of you, but of what it would mean if he were wrong. The constable steps forward. It would go better for you if you confess, he says. He doesn't add the rest, and worse if you don't. He doesn't need to. You look at the paper again. It's already written for you, just waiting for your hand. Each blank space between the names like a noose, uncoiled, patient. You could sign, say what they want. You'd get your life back. For a while anyway. But it wouldn't be yours. You think of the others, those who confessed. You've seen them paraded through the town, heads down, lips muttering, thank yous to the same crowd that would hang them if the weather were different. They live like ghosts who still owe rent. The Reverend offers a quill. You stare at it for a long time, and then, very quietly, you say, no. He flinches, not in anger, but in pity, the kind men use when they've already given up on you. Then pray, he says. Pray for God to show you truth. He kneels, but his prayer is a performance, practiced and perfect, made for an audience you can't see. You sit on the straw, watching the shadows his words make on the wall. They twist, like hands reaching for something that isn't there. When they leave, They don't close the door all the way. Cold air seeps in, carrying faint sounds from the street. A dog barking, the distant rhythm of a hammer, and something else. Laughter. It's muffled, carried by the wind, but you know that sound now. It's the sound of people who've remembered a new story about you. You lie back, staring at the crack of light beneath the door. It wavers with every gust of wind, a soft pulse, like the town breathing. You think of the word confession, how it once meant truth, and now it just means survival. You close your eyes. You've stopped praying, but the words still form on your tongue out of habit. Deliver us from evil. You pause. The silence that follows feels like an answer. By dawn, the Reverend will tell the town you refused salvation. They'll call it pride, or madness, or proof. But the truth is quieter than that. Sometimes refusing to confess is the only way left to stay yourself, even if the rope finds you anyway. It's dawn again, or something pretending to be it. The sky over Salem isn't pink or gold. It's grey, the colour of water poured over ashes. You're awake before they come for you. You knew they would. Sleep left hours ago, replaced by that strange calm that comes when fear has burned itself out. The footsteps arrive like a slow drumbeat through the corridor. Keys rattle, wood groans, and the door swings open. Constable Herrick stands there, not unkindly. He doesn't look at you the way he used to. Not like a man seeing evil, but like one carrying a task that won't stop haunting him. Behind him, the Reverend waits with a book in his hand, and an expression caught somewhere between victory and apology. It's time, he says. You nod. There's nothing else to do. Outside, the town is already awake. Frost clings to fences. Your breath comes out like incense smoke. They've built the gallows on the hill, the same hill that used to hold the maypole long ago, before joy became a sin. Now the timber stands alone, its rope darkened from the damp. The crowd is smaller than you imagined, but louder. People whisper prayers and superstitions. One woman clutches her child's face into her skirts. Another stares straight at you, like she's watching to see if guilt has a shape. A few men from the meeting house talk among themselves about mercy, though none of them seems willing to practice it. You catch sight of the girls. They stand together, wrapped in cloaks, eyes wide. One looks frightened now, not of you but of what happens next. When this story ends and they have to live with what they've made, the others just look tired. The Reverend walks beside you as they lead you uphill. He reads from the Psalms, something about valleys and shadows, but the words fall apart in the wind. You stop halfway up the slope, look down at the town below. From here, Salem looks peaceful. Chimneys smoking, snow melting on rooftops, people going about their morning routines. It almost looks like a place that could never do this. You wonder if it will ever know what it's done. The gallows creaks softly in the wind, as if impatient. The rope swings just enough to make the wood groan. They ask if you have any last words. You think of 1,000. You choose none. Because what could you say to people who've already decided what your silence means? You glance at the Reverend. He looks relieved when you don't speak. Silence he can work with. Silence fits his sermon. The constable tightens the knot. He doesn't meet your eyes. You look up one last time. The sky is pale and blank, the same color as the parchment your name was written on. You wonder if the snow will fall again tonight, and whether the flakes will remember this moment, drifting down over empty streets, while someone, somewhere, tells the story of how the devil once walked among them, and they were brave enough to hang him. When the trapdoor drops, the world doesn't change. The same wind still moves through the pines. The same bell tolls in the meeting house. The same people go home and warm their hands by the fire. Only the silence afterward feels new. It's cleaner, easier. By sunset they'll say you died unrepentant. By winter they'll forget your face. And by next spring someone else will be accused, because Salem always needs a witch to keep the rest of them pure. That's how it ends. Not with screaming, not with flames, but with a crowd convinced it's righteous, and a silence that finally stops whispering back.